Okay, good evening everybody. Sorry to pull Monday's meeting forward, but I know where I'm going to be hasn't got a good internet connection. I think I'd like to start with what these seminars in the basics are about, because it's not just the subject material, because some of you would have covered this subject material before, and some of you may have studied and read this subject material elsewhere. But I've circled a couple of things on my board there. First of all, who teaches this? So I think that that's going to be something that runs through each and every one of these ideas. But I think, you know, do you walk the talk? You know, well, you walk the talk, but you talk the talk, but do you walk the talk? So, you know, again, this is back to this idea that not only do you do this stuff in your own game, but do you coach this stuff to other people? So I was working with one of my guys on the £1,000 package on Friday, I think it was. No, Saturday. Thursday or Friday. And we did some work, and then I gave him the practice to do. And I didn't do a good job within the lesson structure of the show him the drill and get him to show me the drill, because then I had to spend the next, well, I think half a day almost refilming it, realigning the important things, and then giving him feedback until he could do it. So we should have done that while I had him here, and because I tried to rush things a little bit to get to the course, I missed it. But then when I started to do my practice for the tournament in Orlando, I noticed that my practice sheet was brilliant, because when I followed those steps on my practice sheet, then I was able to focus my feedback, what I was receiving from. So I was on a task, I had my 21 balls out, but I was able to notice something else and make a note of that, and then I'm going to move that into the rest of my practice. So I asked you, Nadia, I asked those people, the people that I've trained and given the practice sheet, you know, is anybody using it? And if you don't use it, then what's the point? You know, we're all so busy, and so is the whole golf nation, running from tip to tip to tip to tip, and yet we don't let the concrete set. So you know, we've got to have some fixed ideas about what we're going to work and how we're going to work on it, and then we need to get that concrete dry before we move on to something else. And again, it was almost like I loved it that I messed up with this guy's drill, because it just showed me the importance of making that drill clear. And I think also, again, because I started working on this £1,000 package, it's also really sharpened me up within the whole managing the process, and I'm going to give you a lot further feedback on that, and also make sure that they're introduced through the YGA into the set of systems we're going to run. So, you know, who teaches this is about, you know, how you can be different, but then you've got to do it, you know. And Paul, bless him, was on last week, and you know, he said he'd done level 1 and level 2 golfing machine, and you know, he'd been given this incredible postural setup routine for both the body and for the arms, and he wasn't using them, and he wouldn't teach them because they were different from what's being taught. And you know, I saw the guy on Revolution Golf. He's quite famous. Rice. Have you seen? Yeah. Anyway, Andrew Rice, I think it is. And he was talking about posture and and he never mentioned the lordosis, but he called it the bend in the back. And he was talking about people over lordosing. Well, then he gave this half-hearted idea of you're completely unlordose, and then you completely lordose, and then you go halfway, and then you sit in it, and I'm thinking, what a load of toot. Because, you know, in the golfing machine, we set the internal obliques, we stack ourselves up properly, we go down and forward, and then we just keep it, and then we haven't got to mess with it at all. So yeah, you know, I'm amazed I'm thankful. That's not quite true. I'm really thankful that, you know, Paul was honest enough to say that he wasn't talking it, because then we can look truly at some of this information that we've got here, and first of all show you what the benefits are, and then practice it. So I think this is the huge thing, is that you then take it and work with it. So you know, again, we got some email footage on YGA where Brian says, I'm going to go and research this. Don't research it. Go and put it into practice. Go and see what it feels like. See what you notice. Examine it. You know, again, I had about 5 or 6 emails back saying, you know, I'm following the intrinsic method. Well, what do you think this is but intrinsic? You know, it's wholly and completely and utterly intrinsic. And part of being intrinsic is to experiment and to learn from those experiments. We could say that you make mistakes and we learn from our mistakes, but I think we learn from our feedback. I don't even want to call it mistakes. We learn from our feedback. And as we know, we're highly trained in feedback through the Charles Seashore stuff. So anyway, the 3 subjects that I've chosen tonight, with the help of Danny, was inside quadrant of the golf ball, which, if you can see, is clearly marked on my golfing machine map here, and the benefits of it. And I think before I go any further, the reason that most swings are like they are within the improver section are because the golf coaches directed the attention of the client to the back of the ball. Sorry, I've just lost my picture. To the back of the ball instead of the inside quadrant. And as soon as we put our attention to the back of the ball, then what happens is the club head wants to get into a straight line, the ball to target line straight. But that's not how our body works again. So if we're intrinsic, what happens is, if we start off here, then when we turn, the club comes on the inside. When we come back, the club comes back on the inside. We don't have to do that. That's what happens when you work intrinsically. That's what happens when you take advantage of what we call the lateral sling. Now, when it comes to trying to assimilate information correctly, sometimes we almost have to tell a lie. So, although I'm saying we need to direct our client to the inside quarter, it's not quite true as far as the technical aspects. We actually need to hit the ball 1 dimple in from the middle line with the club face partially open. So then as it comes through and you start to turn, it leaves the club face when it's square. We know this. But to avoid this, which happens near enough in 99% of the golfers, everything coming over here, is that if we try and hit the inside of the golf ball, that can't happen. You can't have that if you're trying to hit that inside quadrant of the golf ball. And the exaggeration of it is you almost want to think that you're coming in at 45 degrees to it. Now, when we do this, then that's going to give you some other advantages. So guess what the club face has to do if it's coming to inside quadrant now? It has to close. Now, as we know with the majority of slicers and power lossers, they're coming in here and the club face opens. So again, 90% of faults are eradicated immediately. When we get to the more advanced golfer, we can start talking about your power pressure point. Now, anybody that is operating a swing without paying any attention to their pressure point, the number 3 pressure point as per the golfing machine, which is this bit here, basically won't be able to play golf correctly. So they can play incorrectly for sure, but they won't be able to play correctly. Now, as soon as you start to feel that you're going to come to inside quarter, number 3 pressure point, you'll become aware of it. So you may or may not become aware of power pressure point number 3 at this point, but when you get into your turn and then aim for inside quarter, there's a very slight reroute and you'll feel the power pressure point. And then once you've got the power pressure point, you can guide that all the way down and then into impact and have that power pressure point behind that shaft at impact. So it helps you do that as well. It also then helps you understand shaft lean. Now you can't, I haven't got the camera in the right position for this, but basically what we're saying is that's how it's going to look at address for you, but in actual fact at impact, that's how you want the shaft to look. Okay, so that is what we call shaft lean. Now again, when we come in from here and we come in from inside quarter, that's what you'll see. You'll see that shaft lean. So as long as you haven't had club head throwaway now, you're going to have sustained line of compression. So it beats me why every single golf coach isn't teaching their clients to hit inside quarter. You know, why are we not doing this? Why are we not teaching inside quarter? Because it intrinsically allows golfers to adopt a natural golf swing. So the client does need guiding. They need incredible guiding because they're trying to hit the back of the ball. Basically, there's if you like, almost a climate in the air that says hit the back of the ball. You couldn't. I don't think you could go to a driving range without hearing the comment, hit the back of the ball. So, you know, no wonder that we're all trying to hit the back of the ball, but we shouldn't be. We should be trying to hit the inside quarter of the ball. Now, yes, we need to know then fundamentally how we close the club face, and it is a huge exaggeration because in actual fact all we need to do is come in square to one dimple inside that ball to target line. But because we're trying to come in here, that's more likely to happen. And then of course we've got to have forearm rotation. So if that club face is coming in open, then we've got to get forearm rotation. Okay. Then we've also got to get GH joint rotation. So these things have to come in then to close the club face. So we'll get all of these changes just by working on inside quarter. So again, for me, a very, very intrinsic exercise. There's things that we can do to enhance that. I haven't got it with me. And yeah, another thing I meant to say, even though I'm picking on one thing, I'm really not going into too much detail here. I could go into a lot more detail. But the idea is that from this nudge that I give you, for you to go out and experiment, discover what you discover, and then come back to the YGA format and put your questions, put your observations down on there so that we can then discuss it as a group. So we can all have that same information and quality of information. And obviously the better players like Nadia, you know, you've got time to put more effort into it. Okay, so let's move into the pinprick aim. And again, you know, I've gone on about pinprick aim again and again and again. Now let me ask you this question, and you know, I'm going to give Danny a hard time now because Danny listens to me more than anybody. So just unmute, Danny. So Danny, we talked about pinprick aim, and we talked about how we use the eyes, and specifically how we go in, or in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, yeah? Have you taught that to anybody?
No, I've taught the other way of in, out, and
so you have taught it?
Yeah.
Have you gone on the golf course and used it yourself?
Yeah, I have.
And which one did you prefer? In, or in, out, in, out? So tell us. So what did you do? You put. How do you? So you've got your. You've picked your pinprick, or how do you get your pinprick?
With the shorter ones. So
Now do the longer ones, because everybody can do the shorter ones.
I do it differently for the two. I go in, out, like that kind of really in and out on the short one.
Okay. All right. So look, hat off to Danny, because Danny's actually doing it. Yeah? Nadia, are you doing it? You're using your eyes to connect to the pinprick. Because if we don't use our eyes to connect to the pinprick, we don't use our brain to connect to the pinprick. So we've got to use, you know, again, and it's definitely, I can't think of anything more that taps into our natural skills than telling our brain where we want to go. It's you know, they've written thousands and thousands of books on manifesting and you know, asking it is given, and all these thousands of things that say you must be very precise about where you're going if you want to go there, and then you tap in to all those things. That obviously makes your rehearsal swing 5 times more powerful. And also, if if you've really set your eyes and you've really got it, then you'll be far more specific with your feedback from the body about whether you're doing it. We probably need to use a lot of imagery to do that. Now, I think that the next thing that is probably the toughest to do is to then, once you've fixed that, take the target into your body. So now, very few people, unless they've done a lot of work with Fred, well, let me ask, Danny, have you ever taken the target into your body?
I'm taking it into my brain.
Okay, so well, that's fine, but then is that as a visual concept?
Yeah.
Right, so we want to lose the visual concept and you want to be connected here. Okay, now the reason I believe, and again this has been, I can't say I've read this anywhere, this is from my own experiment, and the thought process I had today as I was riding my bike, thinking of it, as my mind tends to wander as I ride the bike, was that I want to get that connection to the target through all the imagery and the eye stuff, and then I want to get it here. And the reason I want to stay connected to the target is I'm already programmed here. Now I want to have the experience here. And I think one of the reasons I want to have the experience here, because if I'm thinking about there, I'm thinking of outcome. Now I've set my goal to reach the target. That's what I want to do, but I don't want to be involved with outcome as I swing. Because if I'm involved with outcome as I swing, then I'm going to get ego orientated. I'm not going to be paying attention to what's going on with my club head. to all of the intrinsic things that the intrinsic golf people want us to be aware of, I can't, because I'm thinking of the target. So I've got to hold the target in my heart. I've got to hold it somewhere and trust that I've programmed it in, and then you stay here. You stay in this moment. You stay centered. You stay grounded. You stay connected, and then you have the experience here. And again, you start doing that with your putting, and you'll see the difference it makes immediately. Now, you'll also notice, well again, tell me what you notice. I've got 1,000 things that I've noticed from doing it, but let's see what you can notice. Now, you may find it a little bit of a struggle to get the target here, but you can. If you connect to it with your eyes, like I've said, connect to that pinprick, connect how you're going to do it, what the rehearsal is, and have it here, it'll be fine. And then you just have the experience almost in your C or G. So the last one I'm going to move on to, and this is very much us first. So that's language. So if we go back to what we said, what occurs intrinsically, whatever we think about, whatever we say, we move towards. So if you say, I'm putting terribly today, then that's what's going to happen. If you say, I'm hitting it right today, then that's what's going to happen. Almost guaranteed. You move towards what you do, what you think, and what you say. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to notice in your language when you're speaking negatives. And that's the tough thing. So you've got to really develop in your listening and listening to yourself. Just play a tape, do a lesson and play the tape, and notice when you say anything that has any kind of negativity in it. Notice it in yourself and then understand what you've got to say differently. Because here's the thing. If your clients are going around saying all this negative stuff about their swing, I'll never get this, this is too hard, I don't like the feeling of this, and so on and so forth, they're in emotions, they're not in feedback. You aren't training them right. And if you don't stop and change the way you speak, you are not walking the talk. You're talking the talk, but you're not walking the talk. And again, if we are going to truly allow the client to develop at breakneck speed, because you give them the autonomy to listen to their own body, their own mind, and start working things out themselves, you're going to have to point these things out to them. You are going to have to be a guide for this. And it's not fair for you to be a guide until you change your own language. Out of emotion into feedback. Feedback is just technical. Once you decide that, yeah, you're coming 7 degrees on the outside, what would have to happen to turn it into only 3 degrees? What would have to make it minus 2 degrees? What would have to make it 2 degrees on the inside? What would you have to do? What would you have to feel? You are giving them still complete autonomy for their actions. You are just guiding them. But you need to know that it's your responsibility to guide that. Okay, so I think that's the 3 subjects covered. And remember, each one of these is just the tip of the iceberg. Each one of them is, you can ask questions now, but also then the most important thing is you take them away in practice. Okay, so if you want to unmute, we'll go for it.